So it seems that as foretold by the reveal trailer, we've got yet another Tyranid organism incoming. This guy is now confirmed to be a leader for the Tyranids, a winged prime swooping down from the skies, and he appears to have enough raw melee might to allow him to tear himself a Terminator in half. Let's take a look at the model and talk about what it might mean in terms of other kits released and how it might work in game. Hello and welcome back to Warspecs Tactics, where today we're keeping up with Games Workshop's Tyranids news and reveals. Over the past few weeks, Games Workshop has been building up to the great big reveal of their launch box for 10th edition, the one that's previously been rumoured to be called Leviathan. That's apparently going to be shown off this weekend, and Games Workshop have been giving us a different model preview each Monday afternoon. New things that if they're following their pattern for the Indomitus release, these are all going to be in that great big launch box, and then we're going to see a whole load more this weekend. It looks like this guy might well be leading the Tyranids into battle though. The HQ for the Tyranid army in that box, it looks like it's probably got a fair few Space Marine heroes to go up against. From the cinematic reveal trailer that we had, I was pretty certain that we were going to be getting a model of this sort of equivalent. It certainly looks like a Winged Tyranid Prime from the teaser. He just had a fair bit more character and malice compared with a lot of the other Tyranids in that trailer. Though, as a fair few other people had said, they were wondering whether or not it might be just another Tyranid Shrike or perhaps a small Hive Tyrant, but it does seem that Games Workshop has come through and confirmed that this guy is indeed a Tyranid Prime. For those who maybe aren't quite as in tune with the infinite biohorrors of the Tyranid Primes are basically a variant on the warrior genus, a leader beast with enhanced synapse and command abilities, and perhaps generally considered to be more commanders and leaders as opposed to raw melee might, even though it certainly looks like he's got enough power to rip apart a Terminator in that trailer. In the lore, maybe not having the most enormous differences compared with warriors, they're often tricky to distinguish for Imperial commanders. You're not able to assassinate an enemy leader if they just look kinda similar to a bunch of the rest of the bugs. To my knowledge, I don't think we've ever had a winged prime before. The one that we've got currently is just a plastic kit that's built out of the standard Tyranid warrior box. That one doesn't have any option for wings, and in general wings can be pretty handy for an HQ unit to have them jumping about the board. Often it makes more sense to pay a bit more points and have some decent speed. It would mean that he can actually get his buffs and his melee threats to where they're needed on the board. Should be pretty fun to have him nipping around from place to place, and I'd guess that model-wise he's probably going to be in this launch box that comes out at the weekend. Likely a unique sculpt that's beyond that, and maybe starter sets might not be the easiest to get. I feel like with the last couple of launch boxes that we've had for 8th and 9th edition, the individual character sculpts have been a little bit tricky to get out of after those have gone away. The existence of this guy could also imply that a Tyranid Shrike release would be on the horizon as well. That's the winged warrior variant that Forge World have made parts for in the Tyranids past but have now gone away. In theory, primes are supposed to be leaders as opposed to individual combat characters, and it'd just make a lot more sense to me if he was actually leading some winged warriors as opposed to things like gargoyles maybe. They'd also be things that could keep up with him, but maybe just feels like they're a bit of a smaller level of threat. I guess that Shrikes probably aren't coming in the launch box, though I guess we'll wait and see. They weren't obvious in the reveal trailer in any way, but I guess it could make quite a lot of sense if they give him a unit to lead in that same box. Focusing on the actual miniature itself though, I feel like they've done a pretty good job with this guy. He does look very menacing with that enormous great big bone spur on his head. He's got a great big lolling tongue, and he just seems to have a fair bit more malice and energy than a bunch of the other Tyranids maybe. In terms of what he's armed with 2 big talons plus the wings. And the same as the trailer, the arms do seem to slot into different parts compared with the winged Hive Tyrant. The Flyrant has his mounted on the top set of limbs, and then he's got his weapons mounted underneath. This guy swaps that around, so his wings are kind of under his arms. I can't help but think that maybe makes him just look a little bit more awkward as a miniature. He's holding his wings furled here as well, walking along. I kind of feel like it might have been fun to have him flying, seeing as he is a winged prime, but I guess it's nice to mix up the sculpts a bit. Here's the current Tyranid Prime in comparison, kind of similar about his head and midriff. He's got 2 sets of weapons though, one of them isn't taken up by a set of wings like the winged one. It does mean that this guy's likely going to be punching a bit harder, seeing as he gets some combat weapons and also a gun as well. Kind of seems that similar to the Flyrant, you're going to have the option of either the Wings Prime moving faster and getting that combat where it needs to be, or having the walking one that might be a bit more sturdy as well, but then packing a bit more might in terms of combat and shooting. Here's just a quick comparison with the winged Hive Tyrant, so you can see his wings. The Flyrant's wings are mounted on the top set, and the Primes are mounted on the bottom set. In general, beyond that, the 2 models do have a fair bit of similarities though, barring their pose. We've also got a couple of other pictures as well. They did a 360 of the new Prime, so we can see his back. Looks like he's got some quite big spurs jutting out of the back of him. and then another shot of him smashing his way through a space hulk or something, I suppose. In-game, they haven't chosen to give us any previewed rules for him yet. My guess would be that the launch box ones we might get the full rules for at the weekend, as they're going to have demo games of 10th edition at Warhammer Fest, and that kind of implies that they're going to be lifting the lid on the rules for the starter box miniatures at least. For rules though, I'll be kind of interested to see whether or not this guy winds up being a leader, or if he's going to be a lone operative. I feel like the lore and flavour of the Tyranid Primes seems to be more in keeping with having them lead other squads, as opposed to having just winging around on their own, breaking stuff with their talons, though that does seem to be what he was doing in that reveal trailer. If that's the case though, I suppose it means that this guy would have a squad to join. He'd need some sort of squad of winged Tyranid critters. I'd guess gargoyles would have a pretty high chance of being an option for him, but again I do think that there's a pretty decent likelihood that he's going to be leading Shrikes around, we just haven't seen them yet. Otherwise, just in general out of 40k's history, having the option to give a character a jump pack or wings often tends to be one that a lot of people will choose to pick up. Certainly for things like Chaos Space Marine Demon Princes, wings are pretty much mandatory for them, getting around the board very quickly and taking the fight to the enemy. Even if they cost a fair bit more than the standard version on foot, they tend to be taken just because of how much they give you the chance of bringing that model to bear effectively. As for other warriors and primes as well, he should be bearing Synapse, which has been confirmed as the Tyranids army-wide rule. We don't know the exact contents of it yet, but it seems at least kind of likely that it'll be a gnawing morale for the little swarms, and maybe casting Shadow of the Warp on any nearby Psykers too. It seems that this guy is a melee-only miniature, which means that he'll probably have a fairly fearsome profile with those Scything talons, and judging by the Games Workshop preview article, it seems quite likely that he'll get the Deep Strike rule as well. They did say that he can drop down in the midst of the foe, though I guess unless he's got any other special rules to actually help him get into combat, dropping down at 9 inches and gambling on making a charge could be a bit questionable. Should be interesting to see what he can do though. I'm sure he'll get some sort of rule for buffing nearby Tyranids' damage output, kind of similar to what we've seen on the Lieutenant and the Librarian. Otherwise, adding this guy into our very rough predicted launch box so far, looks like on the Tyranid side we now have the Prime, Von Ryan's Leapers, and some Termagants. Versus confirmed on the Space Marine side, we've got the Librarian, Phobos Lieutenant, and Terminators. It'll certainly be cool to see just how much of this gets realised at the weekend, and feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see my breakdown of the box in full. Let me know what you guys make of the new Wings Prime though. I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say down in the comments, and feel free to subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more like this. I'll certainly keep up with Games Workshop's news and releases for 10th. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel and you'd like to help support, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked down in the video description below. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.